Welcome to Tech Intersect. I'm your host, Tanya Evans, and my life and work exist at the heart of law, business, and technology. Yeah, I've earned a few fancy titles and degrees over the years, but the bottom line is I'm a writer, speaker, teacher, and lifelong learner, and I'm really excited that you've joined me on this journey. So what is Tech Intersect? Well, it's authentic, empowering conversations with really interesting guests who demystify complex topics to prepare you for the future. Because your future is now. And it exists where law, business, and tech intersect. Get ready to listen, learn, and leverage. Let's get started. In this episode, I welcome technology and lifestyle expert Stephanie Humphrey to the show. She's a former engineer turned media personality, a technology contributor for ABC News, and you may have seen her regular segments on the nationally syndicated daytime show Strahan, Sara and Keke. She's also the founder of Till Death Do You Tweet, an educational series she delivers to students, parents, schools, and businesses. Stephanie has a long and impressive history in technology and media, but she is most passionate about helping people, especially children, to become better digital citizens. We cover exactly what that means and how best to utilize technology responsibly and safely. This is particularly important because although we recorded this episode a few weeks back, we are now living in the age of COVID-19, the novel coronavirus. Many of us are working from home, sheltering in place. This is an anxious and uncertain time, and everyone is using online capabilities and other technology to connect remotely, given that so many people are involved, and necessarily so, in physical distancing. Many people were talking about it as social distancing, but I'm going to refer to it as physical distancing. Now more than ever, we need to be social in virtual communities, but we also want to do so safely and responsibly. And Stephanie will help us in this particular episode. So now it's time to listen, learn, and leverage. Let's get started. I am so happy to welcome technology and lifestyle expert Stephanie Humphrey, aka Tech Life Steph, to Tech Intersect to talk about what it means to be a good digital citizen on social media and the internet in this increasingly challenging technological age. And I'm especially excited to have Stephanie on Tech Intersect because she's a friend, a speaker circuit colleague, and from my hometown, Philadelphia, which makes both of us Philly Johns. If you don't know what that means, please ask Google because we don't have time to explain right now, but I digress. Stephanie, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I hate to have to throw any salt on that wonderful, wonderful intro.
Oh, no.
However, I
Oh,
am
no.
originally from Pittsburgh. I've lived in
Okay. Okay.
Philadelphia for years, though, so I am an honorary John at this point. But I got a rep for my hometown too, and I am originally from Pittsburgh.
No worries. We have Pittsburgh love. We got Pennsylvania love.
That's
Let's do
right.
that.
That's right.
Commonwealth love.
PA love,
Excellent. Excellent.
and I am a
So
John.
you are an official John. So there's that. There's that. Before we get into some of the really incredible things you are doing, particularly with your programming around Till Death Do You Tweet,
Mhm.
I want to share with the listeners the path that you took from tech to media and all of those things that led you to this point, because I love origin stories. You have a really interesting one, and it's not a linear path. But what I love about this is that each step that you've taken really makes sense given what you're doing now. So please share that with the
It,
listeners.
so true. It's definitely not a straight line. My background is in engineering. I have an
Mm,
undergraduate degree in electrical engineering and a master's degree in telecommunications and networking engineering. And I worked as an engineer for 13 years for Lockheed Martin. So sat in the cubicle with the
right.
security clearances and all that good stuff, and just was not at all fulfilled there. Felt like there was something else out there I could be doing, and went through a variety of different things looking for what might end up being my exit strategy. So, fitness was sort of the thing at first, and I was gonna train and open up a
Mhm.
gym and franchise and be the Black Lucille Roberts. That was the
Yes.
goal at the time, and I was teaching kickboxing in a couple spaces in the city, and working towards my personal training certification. And while I was doing that, I actually got the opportunity to be in a fashion show. And
Mm.
it was a woman that I worked out with, a woman I went to the gym with asked me to be in her fashion show, and she's like, "Oh, we'll put you in something cute, show off your little stomach and da 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 da." And I got a discount. It was at a dress barn, a retail women's retail clothing store, and she was going to
Yes.
give me a discount on whatever I bought that night too. So that was what really kind of solidified it for me. So I was like, shoot, I get to come and walk and shop too. So let's do this. And it
Right.
literally was just a favor for a friend. And as it happens, because the universe always knows better, there was a woman there that had a modeling agency. Well, it was like modeling
Mm.
school slash agency. And she and I got to chatting afterwards, and, oh, do you model professionally? You were great, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm not a size zero. I'm not 6 foot tall. I'm not all those things you associate with modeling. And I'm like, no, I'm an engineer. I'm just doing this for my friend. And you should think about it. You were really great, blah, blah, blah. And she may have only just been trying to sell me runway classes, but the
Right.
the seed of inspiration was planted, so to speak. So I just started looking into it. It was never, even at that point, it wasn't something I thought would become a new career for me. It was just something that could give me a good diversion and distraction from my day-to-day 9 to 5, and make a couple extra bucks on the side. So started looking
Right.
into it, asking questions, asking around, got some pictures done. I did finally get an agent in Philadelphia, and the more I did, the more I wanted to do. So the modeling
Mm.
stuff was cool, but when I was able to get in front of that camera and just be myself and be a host or a spokesperson, acting's not really my thing either. But
Okay.
when I can just be myself, when I'm educating people on some particular topic, that's my lane. I realized that that was my lane. So hosting, spokesperson, that kind of thing, lifestyle expert, that whole thing. So just figured, let me see what this could be. And slowly but surely, it was a very, very gradual process, because I was
Right.
not in a position to, you know, drop everything and run to LA, or, sleep in my car on Hollywood Boulevard or anything like that, or, head to New
Right.
York and start over, because, I wasn't 22, and I had a job that was paying me six figures. So why would I go do something else at this point? But it was calling me. My spirit, was talking to me, and
Yes.
again, the more I did, the more I wanted to do, and the more I, realized that this was something that I could do and make a living at. So there came a point in time where I had to sort of make that decision. And so I came up with
Mhm.
a plan that I was comfortable with, that would allow me to leave my job and still, maintain my lifestyle. And did that in 2007, and was doing a bunch of stuff, because at that time I hadn't sort of settled on tech life. Steph wasn't born yet at that time, because
Okay.
I hadn't sort of settled on the idea of doing tech in media. It hadn't occurred to me, to be perfectly honest, because I was
Mm.
so, my objective was to get as far away from all of that as possible. So I kind of threw
Right.
the baby out with the bathwater at that time. I said, I'm going to be an entertainment reporter, and I'm going to do red carpet stuff, and I'm going to ask people who they're wearing, and that's going to be my life. And I did get to do some of that. It's a really difficult area of journalism to break into, because there's so
Right.
many other people that are trying to do it, and so many other people that have actual journalism degrees that are trying to do it. So I
Right.
was running into a lot of that pushback from casting directors and networks and different things like that. But I'd say for about 2, 3 years maybe, I was successful enough. I was working at QVC as a
Right.
model. I was doing a lot of Philadelphia. The bulk of the work in Philadelphia in front of the camera is in industrial videos and
Wow.
primarily pharmaceutical industrial. So I did pharmaceutical industrial videos for Merck and Wyeth and Glaxo. If anybody listening works for any of those companies, you probably saw me as rep number two, you know what I mean, or Dr. Williams or somebody, because that was literally the bulk of my work at the time, and got to do some red carpet stuff. I'm actually in two feature films. Just a whole lot of experience doing a whole lot of cool things. I
Right.
report traffic. I was the backup on-air traffic reporter for the CBS affiliate in Philadelphia for a time, and I
Mm.
actually still do traffic on the weekends for the radio here. And so just all of those things that got me comfortable in front of the camera, that gave me the experience of extemporaneous speaking, because sometimes you just got to make that stuff up as you go along. And
On the fly.
yes, absolutely. And it all, and like you said, it all kind of prepared me for what was going to be that next step. And so there came a point in time where I had a meeting with a guy who was at the time the vice president of diversity for Comcast. And I was
Mhm.
convinced I was going to go in there and dazzle him with my charm and my beauty and my charisma. And he was not going to be able to help but put me on television. And I said, I get in there. So it's a whole story. We'll have to tell the real story over drinks someday at Eddie V's. But
Nice.
but
Nice.
I go in here with this whole attitude and this whole mindset. I had set my intention, if you will, to
Mm.
make this man love me, basically. And he literally, let me talk for about 10 minutes. And he said, I'm going to stop you right there. He said, what are
Mm.
you doing? And I'm like, what? Because I'm thinking this could be my big break. He works for Comcast. This
Right.
is gonna be it, and he's like looking at me like, not necessarily something on the bottom of his shoe, but the disdain was evident and
Mm.
palpable. And he's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, "What do you mean?" As my bottom lip starts quivering and I'm trying not to cry in
Right.
front of this stranger. He said, "You walked in here and, you mentioned you were an engineer in passing and you haven't talked about it since." He said, "What are you
Mm.
doing?" And I'm like, "I still don't understand what you mean." And he said, "I know thousands of pretty girls who wanna be on a red carpet." He said, "I don't know anyone that could do what you could be doing." He said, "So
Mm.
I'm gonna ask you again, what are you doing?" And literally in that moment, I hate the term light bulb moment. I am a person.
Right.
I'm a person of faith, so I say God gave it to me in that moment. In that moment, I
Yes.
literally said out loud, "I could be a tech life expert." And and that was it. Tech Life Steph was born that day in his office, after he had broke me all the way down. And and then God gave me the vision, and I said, I have all of this newfound media training and experience, years now in front of the camera doing
Right.
different things, and I got two engineering degrees. So let's put those things to work. Let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater, because I love technology. I was born an engineer, and I was born a teacher. So let's figure out
Right.
how we can put those two things together now, my old love and my new love together, and make it work, make a brand out of it.
That is tremendous, and I believe there's certainly no accidents at all. I also know that God uses people,
Mhm.
and we don't even know if he actually exists, because sometimes you have those moments and it's really an angel passing through to remind you what somewhere deep inside you actually already know.
Yep.
And to have that moment, I mean, we just had a shout moment. I want to like pass the plate. I don't know how this is going to happen. But it means a lot. And also, it means a lot to my listeners, because a common theme across a lot of these fantastic interviews, this amazing path that gets you to this moment in time. And it also reminds people that there's no wasted effort.
That's right.
And as long as you're still breathing, you're still moving, and you can collect all of the wisdom in the past and have the opportunity to course correct. And when you were course correcting, it was, I can imagine, I'm thinking of the timing of all of it and the .com boom, and a lot of energy around the build of Web 2.0 as
Right.
well. But if you're now I don't want to use the word just, a technologist who does not also appreciate business, marketing, media is lost. And if you can find that sweet spot between the two, then I think that's when people really can go on with entrepreneurial endeavors and all the other things.
That's right.
But it also leads me to what you're doing now in terms of uh, we hear a lot of the successes, but there are a lot of dangers on the internet
Oh,
and particularly with social media, right?
child.
So we've created this digital footprint on the internet, and it makes it difficult or impossible to erase. And given that one's digital footprint conveys information to people that you may not intend to see it,
Mhm.
talk to us what you've learned now, some of those cautionary tales about the dangers, and then we'll get to some strategies that children and parents can use. But what are we facing now in 2020 and beyond?
Well, I mean, I think right now the most pressing thing is cancel culture. It's like
Mm,
one tweet and, look at Kevin Hart. I mean, he's sort of made a bit of a
right,
comeback with his Netflix special, but
right,
I think that was only because, he got in that accident and he was able to garner some sympathy from people. Folks were
right,
definitely ready to write him off, and some probably still have. And that's just, one of the many examples we have. And it can happen to anybody, though. And I think people only think it happens to celebrities because those are the higher profile things that we all hear about. But it can literally
right.
happen to everybody. I give examples all through my presentation of just regular people. I don't talk about any
Mm,
celebrities in my presentation because, well, I do talk about one NFL player, but I don't talk about any celebrities in my presentation because I want people to understand that this is happening to all of us in everyday
mm,
life. Just an offhand comment, liking a certain post, posting something in the heat of the moment that you don't get to take back. And I think what most of us don't understand is that the internet is, for all intents and purposes, permanent. What you put
right,
there will last for at least as long as the internet exists. And
right.
everything there is searchable and recoverable. And knowing that, I think, informs what you do from that point on. Knowing that
Hmm.
somebody can go to the Wayback Machine and find your Twitter feed from 2016 or 2010 or whatever should have an effect on your mindfulness as you go forward on the internet and what you choose to share. So I think if people can just remember those two things about the internet, that everything is searchable and
Right.
recoverable, and that it is by and large a permanent record of your deepest, darkest emotional thoughts and feelings, I think that would change the way a lot of people proceeded with their behavior online.
We hope you're enjoying this edition of Tech Intersect. Our conversation will continue in a moment, but first, a word on an exciting opportunity.
The Tech Intersect podcast is released to the public every Friday. But as an Advantage Evans member, you'll receive first listen access and live Tech Intersect Connect video chats. Premium members also receive a copy of my ebook, The Gen Xer's Guide to Upskilling in a Web 3.0 World, and unlimited access to the video chat replays and bonus episodes. My pro members, ready to leverage what they've listened to and learned, receive access to the Upskilling Self-Guided course and VIP group coaching calls. So as you can see, Advantage Evans membership adds substantial value to your podcast experience. And there are 3 ways to take advantage, see what I did right there, of all that the Tech Intersect podcast has to offer. So subscribe now and let's listen, learn, and leverage together.
And now, back to the conversation.
Yeah, I think that social media in particular gives us this false sense that we're just talking to the people we intend to speak to.
Yep.
And even if you have a quote unquote private account in some respects, that you're just a screenshot away from being publicly exposed. So
Listen,
you should, you know.
You gotta watch, and that's what I tell the kids. I'm like, that group chat, that private Facebook
Right,
group, all of those things, just privacy just doesn't exist for us anymore as we knew it. I don't know what, if you're into VPNs, and we can get into the technical weeds of that, but
right,
if you're into that kind of thing, you're a little bit better protected, but even that, there really is no guarantee, because there's
right.
always that next 15-year-old hacker that, revels in the idea of being able to crack a code and want to spill information onto the dark web. So just the idea of privacy, we really do need to change our idea of privacy in this day and age, and understand what we've given up already.
Absolutely. And when they say that data is the new oil and nothing is
Currency.
really free.
Hmm.
So
It is
it is literal
currency.
currency and if you're not monetizing it, then rest assured someone else is and in the 15 seconds between put in your email or heaven forbid sign in with your Facebook account and this is free that it just gives me shivers because we now live in I grew up in a time where you opt out of privacy. There the presumption was privacy
Right.
and now it's like the presumption is no privacy unless you work really, 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 really hard to protect yourself. And even then, by the time you find the 17 steps that you need, for example, on Facebook to opt out of some experiences, but we still have terms and conditions
Yep.
and terms of use.
Yep.
Nobody reads it. So how can people, and I want to divide this question into two.
Okay.
I imagine, well, actually, one, you speak with students in schools, you speak to parents, and you speak to businesses. But I imagine even though the overarching theme would be the same, that you have a different way of communicating to students who have to regularly opt out and they regularly don't versus what you might tell their parents versus businesses. So let's start with students. What
Okay.
do you tell them about how to protect themselves?
So the conversation, it really doesn't start with social media. The conversation starts with personal brand, because
Mm,
that, I think, is the other piece to this whole thing, and the idea that no one really thinks they have one. I people, even in this day and age, even with the Gary V's of the world screaming it from the rooftops, I
right.
think the average person still only thinks about personal brand in terms of celebrities or CEOs, or, somebody who happens to be in the public eye for some reason. And the reality is we all have that personal brand. We all have that thing that we are recognized for, that way in which people know us, even if it is only, even if you've never been on the internet at all, if you've never touched a computer at all, you still have a personal brand that follows
Right.
you around amongst just your circle. When somebody says your name, if somebody knows you or knows of you, there are certain things that they know about you that make up who you are, or at least who they perceive you to be. So we
Mm,
all have that brand, and we talk about that with the kids. We talk about how it gets represented in person. How do you introduce yourself to someone? Do you know how to do a proper handshake? Are you making eye contact with that person? You have less than a second to make an impression. So, what sort of impression are you making on that person when you're standing right in front of them? Two,
right.
your personal brand gets represented in writing. When you're sending emails to people, when you're turning in your homework, is it legible? Is it spelled correctly? Is it grammatically correct? Are all of those things in place so that when you're not standing directly in front of that person, your personal brand is still being represented in a proper way? It's
Mm,
represented by other people. So, fair or not, what other people think about you can start to become your personal brand. If all of your teachers think you're the class clown, guess what? You're the class clown, even if you only told that one joke that one time, and disrupted the class 2 years ago, that stuck in your teacher's head. They spoke to your other teacher who spoke to your other teacher. So now your personal brand is being propagated in places where you don't even live. So you have to think about all of those things. But we talk about social media in particular and digital footprint in particular, because that is the quickest and most effective way to grow and develop your personal brand, while simultaneously being the quickest and most effective way to destroy it in just one fell swoop, in one tweet, in one post. So that's the connection that I make with the students that gives them that sense of ownership in the process, that puts the onus back on them to do whatever you want. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm not telling you not to be on social media. It can be a very powerful tool if you use it correctly, but this is what can happen if you're not thinking about your personal brand when you're posting, and this is what can happen if you are. So you just put it out there. You give them the choice and the options, and you give them the real world examples of both of those things, the good and the bad, and you let them make the decision. And by and large, it does usually end up being a once they know better, they do better sort of proposition.
Right, absolutely. And I remember I did watch some of your videos to just get a flavor for Till Death Do You Tweet. And one of the takeaways that I was left with is that you don't approach it by saying social media is bad, don't ever use it, right? That just say no approach just isn't going to
Absolutely
work
not.
in this
I would
context.
never tell
Right,
anybody to do that. I love social media.
right.
I ain't never getting off Instagram until there's a new
No, that's right.
Instagram. And there's a lot of good that can be done with social media. There's a lot of money to be made on social media.
Right,
There's a lot of very positive things that can happen using those platforms. So I would never tell anybody not to do it, but you have to be mindful in what you do, and you have to be thinking about what the things you post are going to say about your personal brand now and 10 years from now. Even as a 13-year-old, you have to have that level of mindfulness, because you
right.
know people that are 23 now have things that are coming back to bite them in the butt that they posted when they were 13.
Absolutely. Thank goodness that social media did not
Girl,
exist back in the
listen,
day.
we would be in trouble. We would
No
be in
doubt, no doubt.
trouble.
So, what do you tell parents? So, you set the stage in schools. What advice do you give to parents to not well, certainly to support their children, but I suppose that they should take some advice as well in terms of how they are interacting, because that it can ultimately be reflective of or impact their children. I can imagine as well.
Well, that's the thing. You got to model the behavior that you want to see in your kids. That's number one. Number two, you are going to have to get at least familiar with what your kids are doing online. I think that's the biggest problem that I see with the parents, is that, a lot
Mm,
of them are just like, I'm not tech savvy. I don't understand any of this. I just give them the phone and I just wash my hands of the whole thing. You can't do that, and
right,
and it's not even about being intimately familiar with the technology. It's about having that conversation, and just helping your kid understand that, the same way they need to be a decent person in real life, they need to be a decent person online too. And that's just
right,
parenting. That's that doesn't have anything to do with TikTok. So
right.
it's
That's 101. Right,
exactly. It really is having that conversation, reinforcing that messaging, helping them to understand that the stuff is going to be there forever. And honestly, we've come to a point in our society as it relates to social media where some of these tweets are literally the difference between life and death for some of these students. A
mm,
lot of the schools that I go into after something unfortunate has happened. And now they
right,
want to try to fix it. So I see this. I know that kids are killing themselves because of tweets and posts. I've stayed after seminars for an extra an hour and had kids in front of me in tears because they were being bullied so badly on a social platform.
mm,
So I've seen it. And it's not just a matter of telling kids to suck it up and get over it, and it's just social media and it doesn't mean anything. And I have to help parents understand that they shouldn't try to diminish that
right,
communication in that platform as well, because that means a lot to those kids. That means everything to those kids. And things go viral all the time. Understanding what that means, and it's a different story from just having the one bully at school that doesn't like you, when you got 10,000 bullies that are calling you fat and ugly and things like that. So
right,
it's a different dynamic. The kids are still the same, and they still just want to be popular and liked and everything else, but those tools, the difference that comes with using those tools, makes the game a whole lot more higher stakes, if you will, skills. So that is my first focus with the parents, is helping them understand that this is not something that you can just blow off and hope goes away. But then,
Right.
empowering them as well. So yeah, we got to do this work. The same way you had to teach them how to tie their shoes and look both ways before they cross the street. Now we got to teach them how to be good digital citizens too. It's just a part of the part of the package at the in
Right.
society now. So let's look at what we can do. So now we start talking about tools and resources and digital contracts, and if you need to put any sort of monitoring software on your kids' phones and
Mhm.
all these other considerations. So I'm really trying to give them everything they need to go out there and feel empowered to have this conversation and continue it once the seminar is over.
And I can imagine it also requires that they tune back in, because I find that adults are tuning out on social media and all the technological bells and whistles and the Internet of Things, and all of our devices are talking to us and to each other.
Yes.
And so adults are very distracted as well. And when I think of the development of brains of young people as they are moving into young adulthood, we are only just scratching the surface of the impact
That's
that
right.
that it's happening.
That's
Yeah.
that's right.
So you also speak to businesses. I'm interested to know what some of their questions are, or the advice that you give in the business context as well.
So again, it's so amazing to me that there are adults out there that don't consider themselves someone that has a personal brand that needs to be
Right.
monitored and worked on and developed, and if you're a working professional at this point in the game, if you're not at least on LinkedIn, like, you're behind. And
Right.
everybody's ambition is not to climb the corporate ladder and end up in a C-suite or start their own business, or become this great entrepreneur. I get that, but you still, I have to imagine that you still want to grow even within the company that you're in. And that
Mhm.
happens because you promote your personal brand. Even if you're not
Right.
doing it online, you're talking to your supervisor about that project you just did. You have your performance review where you have to kind of sell your accomplishments over the past year. You have the 360 review where you have to coordinate with
Mhm.
your peers. And so that's all branding, that
Right.
and to a certain degree. And so the idea that you think you can get away with not having to consider that aspect of your professional career is just naive,
Right.
and so that's the first conversation. I try to help them understand that this is a thing that exists. And then, the idea of a digital footprint. Some people don't think, I mean, I don't really do much, and and I'm like, if you've ever touched the internet at all, you have a digital
Right.
footprint. You know what I mean? Like, even if you just sent that one email that one time, or, got on your phone to do a Google search about that one recipe, like, that saved somewhere. That information is saved somewhere, and
Right.
it's searchable and recoverable. So knowing that, and understanding why it's important now to manage what the internet knows about you. What does the internet know
Mm.
about you? When's the last time you Googled yourself? And when you
Right.
did, what came back? So, because you also need to understand that somebody is going to Google you, your supervisor, your manager, a date,
Right.
somebody's going to Google you. So it's up to you whether or not you want to take a little bit of control over what they see when they do. So then
Right.
we get into that conversation. We get into a little SEO conversation, a little search engine
Mhm.
optimization conversation, because utilizing these platforms, these social platforms, or your website or your blog or whatever, is going to help that process. It's going to help your SEO. It's going to help what people see when they look for you look the way you want it to. And
Right.
so I'm helping them kind of control that narrative as much as we can. We don't have that much control over it, but you can do some things. So we talk about those things that you can do. Then we do a LinkedIn deep dive, because that's the low hanging fruit there. That's the lowest barrier to entry, in my opinion, to someone who
Mhm.
wants to start building their personal brand online. get your LinkedIn profile set up. We go through, all the things you need to complete the profile, how your picture should look, the bio, some tips and tricks. So we get into a fairly decent deep dive of LinkedIn and how to use it as a tool to build your professional brand, your personal brand
Right.
and your professional brand, really. And then just kind of tips on it. It used to be. It's funny. Even just as short as 5 years ago, the question was always, how do I separate personal and professional online? And
Right.
now it's how do I balance personal and professional online, because there is no real separation anymore. So we kind of
Right.
talk through some things that people can do to balance their online personas, if you will.
No, that's really important because so much information is being digitized. So let's assume that there is this person out in the world, and I'm judging you. No, I'm not judging you, but I do have concerns if I can't find anything on
And
someone.
if I can't
It's like
find
the two, you know what I
anything,
mean?
listen, I'm like, something ain't right. Hold up. And I mean,
Something's not right.
I
Either
mean,
too much or too little.
I'll look at the age of the person that I'm searching,
Fair. That's fair.
and I'm like, well, older boomers and things like that. And like my dad doesn't have a huge social profile, but he
Yeah.
still has one. You know what I mean? And it
Right.
includes me, because if you go three search
Right.
results down to that one people finder search result, I'm listed as his daughter. So it's like
Right.
there's stuff out there about pretty much anybody at this point, because public records have been digitized, criminal arrest records have been digitized,
That's right.
all of that stuff lives online. So, depending on what someone's looking for, it could come back to bite you. And then if you're not really being proactive in that process, what about all those folks that have the same name as you do? And the
Absolutely.
fact that people don't read anything past the title of anything. So if the John Smith that's a porn star pops up
Right.
first, or the John Smith that is on a sex offender registry pops up first,
Right.
someone may just assume that that's who you are, and keep it moving, and that's a lost opportunity. So, we want to help people understand that in this day and age, there's really no excuse for not trying to establish at least some level of digital footprint for your own
Right.
benefit, and you're really really hurting yourself professionally if you don't.
Absolutely. And I think, at a bare minimum, if you are at a company or with some type of educational institution or a range of things where they're going to at least mention your role or capacity with that company, for example,
Mhm.
that people are controlling your narrative and what you do, and you want to make sure that it's accurate. And in addition to that, I'm thinking of myself as well. Obviously, as the associate dean of the law school, I have my law school dean persona that is, the narrative is on the law school's website, but it was also really important for me to have my own platform, my own website, my own media assets,
That's right.
because you work somewhere until you don't. And I wouldn't
Listen,
want to have to, right? I
listen,
don't want to be deleted and not have access to the information about myself. I will tell my own narrative. Thank you. So that
listen.
is,
And that's the thing, you can't expect that you're going to be at a company for 30 years anymore. Like,
right.
what's the average now? People are hopping every 2 years to from place to place. So if that's something that you see yourself doing, or that is even in within the realm of possibility, changing jobs, you're going to
Absolutely.
need to have a digital footprint.
Well, one of the final things that I wanted to speak to you about and have you share with listeners is the segment that I love the most about what you do, and it's that 60-second tech break. I
Yes.
have learned more in 60 seconds from you, and every time
Listen.
I'm like, oh, Lord, let me get on this. Oh, my goodness. Why didn't I know about this? Thank you. So tell me about how that even came to be, and if you have any tips that you want to share that you spoke about recently or that are memorable.
Okay. Well, I mean, content is king, that's never going to change. And
Right.
most of my content is curated content that I push out every week. I mean, I'm pushing out tech content pretty much 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. I schedule it the night before, and, I read the articles, and then I push out content with
That
my own,
part.
yeah,
Right.
exactly, with
You
my
read them.
own,
Okay.
with my own thoughts attached to them to try to
Right.
spark some engagement, start a conversation around it. But I still want to create content as well. I think it's important if you're going to be branding yourself as this expert that you actually produce content as well. So video is where we're going, and I wanted to be able,
Right.
and I wanted to be able to do something that would, because the thing is, like, there's still a lot of people out here, 99% of people that will tell you that they are very intimidated by technology. It changes
Mm,
all the time. It's always something different, something new, some hack, some breach, some this, some that. And those are the people that I speak to. I am not that tech expert that wants to talk about the latest startups Series A round of funding. I mean, I may pay a little
right.
bit of attention to that on my own for just personal interest, but that is not the messaging that I'm pushing out to the masses, because no one else really cares that much about that besides the people that are in that space. So I'm that person that is all about relevant, actionable information. If it relevant, that was like my motto all last year. It needs to be relevant and actionable. And
I love
the
that.
the actual tagline to the 60-second tech break, I think it's in my Twitter cover image. Watch,
Hmm.
learn, do. So you
Mm.
sit for a minute, watch this video, learn a little something, and then just go do that thing. Change that privacy setting, flip that switch, toggle that button. You know what I mean? Download that thing. I have literally gone through great pains to make it as simple as humanly possible,
Right.
for people to be able to get this little nugget and have it actually change their lives in a really, really measurable and actionable way. So I can think of two in particular that were like, "Oh my god." The one I just did
Go for it.
about
Yeah.
silencing unknown
Yes. Which,
callers.
yes,
Listen,
I immediately did it. And I told you,
life
I said, oh my
changing. I'm
gosh.
telling you. I'm just like, I don't know why I didn't know that that was like a new part of the latest iOS update, but the idea that I could just send those calls to voicemail without ever having to even consider them is just the best thing ever.
Right.
And I can remember one of my very first 60-second tech breaks was around turning off the autoplay on Facebook videos, because it was
Mm,
very, very traumatic to me to have to scroll through my feed and a fight video automatically starts playing, or
right.
some racist screaming at some woman, or somebody getting shot, or a man beating a woman. Like, literally, these videos would just start and I would be like, oh my god, I don't want to see that. And I'm
Right.
trying to press the button and stop it from playing, and just that assault on my psyche was
Right.
disturbing to me. So, when I figured out how to, like you said, dig through the 12 layers that Facebook tries to implement to get you not to do that, I said, I know somebody else is going to want to do this, because nobody wants to
Right.
see that stuff, just automatically in their face without warning. And that made such a difference in my overall enjoyment of that platform. I think
Hmm.
probably in my mental health, and I'm sure it made a difference for some other folks as well. So it's usually those really, really simple ones that you're just like, oh man, I've been looking for a way to do that for so long, and now you've just lightened your technical burden by that much.
Right, absolutely. Because at the end of the day, and I think that one of the common threads, given what we've talked about and certainly what you do, is about taking ownership and control. And so, what I find from all of those tips is these are actionable and meaningful things that we can do immediately to assert some control over our interaction with technology, how we are crafting our brand, how we interact, personally and professionally. And so, a little goes a long way,
Yep.
especially because these platforms aren't going to tell you these things.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So, I feel like it's sort of my mission in life to just give folks a little bit, just a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of encouragement, a little bit of understanding, because I don't like to see people getting left behind. And it's more often than not people in underserved communities, people in communities that look like me, that can surf YouTube all day long, but when you actually talk about how are you using these tools to enhance your daily life and make your life easier, people are usually coming up a little bit blank at that point. So it's just like,
Right.
yes, we have these phones, they're not going anywhere, so let's try to, maximize their efficiency and their use.
Well, before I close out, I have one final question because I have seen some of your segments on Strahan Sara and Keke. And
Mhm.
I'm wondering how that experience is going. You all really seem to enjoy each other. It seems really fun. And I'm just wondering how that's going because I love that part about what you're doing now, too.
It's awesome. I actually, in last August, got a freelance contract with ABC News. So I am
Yay.
officially the technology contributor to Strahan, Sara and Keke, and it's a wonderful, wonderful platform. I think the three of them really appreciate the information. Sara, especially, she loves it. She's like, "Oh my God, I love when you come here," because I think she considers herself like this closet techie,
Ah,
and so she can't wait. She's like, I never even, I don't look at the notes beforehand because I want to be surprised when you bring whatever you bring, because you always bring such cool stuff and you always give us such good information.
yeah.
So I think they all really, really appreciate it. And I think the viewers do too. I'll go back, on their Facebook page and look if they post my segment, I'll look at the comments and answer questions and things like that. So the engagement I think has
Right.
been really great. I just hope to do even more of them this year and hope to be able to help even more people.
Outstanding. Well, you are making a difference. You're making a difference in my life. So, I'm an only child, so I'm usually focused on myself, but I'm happy that you're helping other people too. And the work that you're doing, it's really, really important, particularly as the increasingly technological age requires that we know what's going on. And I am concerned that underrepresented populations will get left behind as we
Mhm.
enter this Web 3.0 build from blockchain, Internet of Things, AI, ML, augmented reality, and all of those things
Right.
that you can't know everything about everything, but we have to be more intentional about the direction that the world is moving and how to best prepare for it, not just for today, but for the future. And so starting where you are, take your existing expertise, take the challenges and questions and concerns, and spend some time particularly with the information that Stephanie is providing. And so there's so many free resources now that we have to start somewhere, but we have to get in the game. And so I appreciate the work that you're doing to help people do that. And I want you to tell listeners how they can connect with you and your work to continue to engage.
Well, my website is tilldeathdoyoutweet.com, or you can just follow me all around the web at Tech Life Steph.
Oh, and you say that on your 60,
That's
60-second
it.
tech, right? I love it. Thank you, my friend. I adore you. And thank you for saying yes when I gave the call.
Listen, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate any opportunity to get the message out there, and just, I think what you're doing is wonderful, providing a platform for people and getting that information out there. So I was happy to help in any way that I could.
Wow. Really valuable information that Stephanie shared about being intentional and mindful of protecting your personal and professional brands on the internet and social media platforms. Meaningful, actionable steps. So here are a few takeaways. One, remember, once posted, always posted. The information we share online creates a digital footprint that is difficult or sometimes impossible to erase entirely. And the information you think you're sharing just with family, friends, and colleagues may end up in the hands of those who wish you harm or those who might hold it against you without context or an opportunity to explain. Two, control the controllables. Control your own narrative, your online identity, your story as best as you can. Know how the digital twin of you, IRL or in real life, the one that communicates with the world 24/7, 365, that one is representing you in the best light. And finally, three, protect your privacy. Strong passwords, vetting links before you click or share, and knowing who you follow and also who follows you. These simple steps go a long way in keeping you safer out here in these digital streets. I'll share more information about safety, security, and privacy in the full show notes that always appears in the Triple L Weekly. And maybe we'll get Stephanie to do an upcoming AMA for Advantage Evans members. If you want to join, please use the link in the summary for a Plus membership. That gives you early access to episodes, a free copy of the Triple L Weekly with the full show notes, media, links, and more. And by the way, Triple L stands for Listen, Learn, and Leverage. And also enjoy your first month free. It's just $1.99 thereafter, but I want you to jump in, enjoy 1 month free, kick all the tires, the bells, the whistles, and then I hope that you'll stay. So that's all for now. Stay safe out here, online and in real life. Wash your hands, protect each other, be kind, show a lot of grace, and let's do what we need to do as in community, the world community, the global community, to make sure that we all survive in the age of COVID-19. Until next time, continue to shine.
Stay in touch with host Tanya Evans via your favorite social media. On Twitter at TechIntersect and on Instagram via the handle TechIntersect. This podcast has been produced by Stephanie Renee for Soul Sanctuary Incorporated.